James Charles here and welcome back to my YouTube channel. First of all, wow, it feels so weird to say those words out loud. Oh my gosh, it has been a really long time since I've been down here in the makeup studio, but it feels really good to be sitting here today. I have missed you guys more than you could ever imagine.
Today, no face, but we're going to talk about James Charles and his excessive, luxurious career as a creator, and I found a perfect article from Cosmopolitan, so credits all go to them. This is just talking about James Charles' long career, going back to I think like 2014 till 2023. So over the last several years, James Charles has had many scandals, and I do mean many scandals. And again, you can pause to read all this. It's going to be a lot of information in this. That's why I chose this article, because it was just like so entail of like a encompassing of his career and what he's been involved in. From his makeup tutorials to events he's gone to, he's had a lot of groundbreaking opportunities, but he's had some faults along the way, including the most recent, which was his scandals of talking to underage people. Multiple times where he has actually conversated about this and talked about how he didn't know and that he's going to do better and all these different things. But now James Charles is saying that he's done with being canceled and he, wants to move past this and da-da-da-da. But, how, I guess, and you guys can kind of answer this in comment sections, how do you move past something like this when this has happened before? This is repetitive behavior, and it's not about you apologizing, it's about you doing better, it's about you showing that you're doing better. And I don't think we've seen that from really any creators, the rehabilitation process. That journey is what you should be including in your content creation, but that's neither here nor there. Even though James Charles has had a lot of misses, he lives in a reported $7 to $14 million farmhouse, and he's done really well for himself. When asked about his scandals, not to him but other people, no one could really give a consensus on whether or not he actually did any of the things he was being canceled for, like the grooming, the talking to underage people. There was never any concise evidence that said he did anything other than just a lot of hearsay and objections. Unlike Miranda Sings, aka Colleen Ballinger, who there is too much information out there. So I don't know that this is something that is really a big hit, because there's just not a lot out there and there was never any certainty. So I don't know how I feel about that, but when it comes to canceling James Charles, I do believe there's some things that he wants being canceled for, but I do think that there's a lot that just moves on past. So this writer is talking about being a millennial and that he was aware of James Charles and his internet presence, but not knowing a lot about him, just kind of like hearsay, and the influences platonic ideal. So I think that when he started out, he was associating himself with a lot of people, and I think when it came down to these accusations, it's like everyone left high and dry, and then they wanted to pit against him when they, really were probably part of the problem. Jeffree Star, Tati Westbrook, and all the other people that wanted to chime in onto the situation. So I don't know, I just feel like not a lot is out there. James Charles first went viral in 2016 after he bought a ring light and used glossy highlight. So this is where we know he started in his bedroom and was pretty much doing makeup already and wanted to start filming it. We know that. We've all been there. We've all been through the gigs where we started with nothing more than, you know, just a camera or even a phone. We've all been there. But then as time went on, I think it was rumored he had like $10 million. That's a decent net worth, right? But over time, he got caught in the stigma of saying inappropriate things and making racial references like insensitive tweets about Africa and Ebola, and for asking Shawn Mendes to, I'm not going to repeat that, but you can see. I think that there's just been a little bit of inappropriate behavior. And again, this goes back to one, being around people and influencers who wanted to quickly go against him, but they were the ones that were either rooting for him or they were befriending him and not speaking out against this at the time when these things were happening. So, I don't know. I feel like the more notable scandals, like him sending inappropriate pictures and texts to underage people who are, you know, around the age of 16 to 18, I do think that one, people were lying just to get, you know, get something out of it. So James Charles, yes, is bad, especially if he actually did those things, but no one could actually provide conclusive proof that he did. They just know that they were texting underage people, but they claim to be adults. I don't know. I don't want to make any assumptions, but I'm very careful myself, and I think that there's a lot of people who look older than they really are, and then there's people who look younger than they really are. So you just got to be careful about that. But me personally, I've never had that issue. I feel like someone's thinking with the wrong head, if you know what I mean. But it's hard. It's hard to keep track of all the scandals that James Charles has been in. You know, a lot of them had to do with like makeup related things, not being honest with his friends, and attending things that kind of directly impacted his friends, you know, his friend's deal. So I think that that's a deal. I always love when he's like posting a picture of him looking out the window, but then he'll talk about how depressed he is, and that really just goes to show you never know what someone's going through, and you can have money galore, but you can still have so many problems, and I completely agree and understand that. So there was so many reports, especially over the early pandemic. The more and more that it was talked about, more and more was coming out, but it just seemed to be so like coincidental that no one mentioned any of this before these allegations came out. The source where list came from was not doing any sort of research, no fact checking. Some of the screenshots depicted consensual conversations between adults, he says. So as you can see, because everything seems circumstantial, it doesn't even appear like he was intentionally trying to talk to a minor. It seemed like someone claimed to be an adult and they were just texting and having a conversation. And I think because of the nature and because he's been involved in these before, I think that's why the internet kind of like ganged up and said, oh yeah, this is right. With Cosmo reaching out to many people who claimed to be a part of this victim, and they were groomed, and that they were talking to someone who was over the age of 18, it didn't seem to go very far, and the information was obviously not there. And this is what I've been saying. It's one thing when there's the apparent proof, right? Colleen Ballinger is very clear proof of there was actual proof out there, whereas there was just hearsay when it came to James Charles. Oh, I'm loving that makeup bag. Anyway, it's getting off of track. I absolutely did F up. These are James Charles's words. He says, but he did deny that he never engaged in grooming. Which again, there's no proof of that, and I don't see that being an issue. Most 99% of the people who he works with is his age or around his age group, so that's usually never very much an issue. And I can't even believe that someone would joke around or even lie about that, because grooming is a really serious issue, especially in the influencer world and in the internet, even in Hollywood. It's a very, very big issue. It's not the kind of lie you want to be spreading around. So lately, the term grooming has been misconstrued both in politics and in entertainment. And I think it's a really big problem, because I think you have to understand what grooming actually is. And for those who actually have been involved in grooming, of course, right, don't want to take away from that, but you can't just call someone a groomer just because you don't like a conversation that they had. There were commenters and bystanders in this whole controversy going down with James Charles, and I just feel like they made it a lot worse. But on other news, there are many people who have stated that James Charles is creepy and irresponsible and has a predatory behavior. Again, don't know about this, but that's up to you to decide. His apology, one in a burgeoning and much mocking genre of the YouTube influencers mea culpas, was a full-throated, how do I put this? It seemed to be less about an apology, more about what other people were contributing to the problem. And so, but I do feel like when he did his apology video, it was very, like he was angry. Not like angry like, hey, it seemed like he was angry at other people, but not angry at himself for this whole situation. So I felt like his original apology was a little too vulgar and angry, and I think it would have been more receptive if he would have, just came with a kind of calm conclusion and addressed it in a responsible manner. Again, I'm so loving when he's doing his pecs and he's getting his makeup done for his YouTube videos, but damn, that's a lot of makeup brushes. I don't know what it is. That's a lot of makeup brushes, but carrying on. James Charles talks a lot about through the pandemic, how he was, having a tough time between the lockdown and the cancellation and really losing a lot of opportunities through this. He talks about how it was one of the worst times in his life. And I don't blame him. I mean, he was experiencing a type of cancellation that you never want to have to deal with, but it does unfortunately come in your career. So this is where James Charles is talking about how it was like, through the pandemic and dealing with these accusations and the cancellations and the scandals. And I think this is a very plausible reaction to dealing with all of this. However, I do want to mention that some of this was within his control. Maybe not the pandemic and some of the reactions, but what he was doing was a creation, the reactions were a creation of his own doing. So I definitely can understand how on one hand, how he was dealing with everything between gaming and staying at home and, kind of scrolling on the phone and dealing with things like that. But at the other hand, you know, you pretty much fed yourself with your own hands. So I think that was probably a big contributing factor to his kind of depression and downfall. We know that James Charles spent a lot of time off the internet and away, kind of reflecting and rebranding himself in a way and kind of finding out where he wants to go from where he had gotten himself. And a lot of times this happens with a lot of YouTubers who get caught in scandals where they take some time off and figure out where they wanted to go. I think that a large part of this has to do with, you know, spending some time away so we can let the heat die down. But again, I think in this instance, it didn't work because the heat, I mean, even years later, the heat is still here and still talking about it. And people are making TikToks, making fun of him. So I think that in this instance, it might not have had the best outcome. James Charles posted a video called An Open Conversation, which I'll post a very short clip here.
Here's James Charles here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. First of all, wow, it feels so weird to say those words out loud. Oh my gosh, it has been a really, really long time since I've been down here in the makeup studio, but it feels really good to be sitting here today. I have missed you guys more than you could ever imagine. I hope you're enjoying your summer. I hope you're doing well. I hope you had a very happy and beautiful Pride Month. It kind of feels like the world is finally getting back to normal with all the vaccines and stuff. I got both my shots over the past couple of weeks, which has been amazing. And I really feel like there's a lot of beautiful things happening in the world right now, and I'm really looking forward to catching up with you guys today. As you know, over the past couple of months, I have been offline. After I posted my last video, which was holding myself accountable, I felt as though it was really, really important for me to actually hold myself accountable and take a major step away and do a lot of work behind the scenes until I was ready to come back. And the last 3.5 months now, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, have been really weird. I've been doing social media for almost 6 years now, which is wild to think about, but I've really never taken a long break to just be away and work on myself. So this time was definitely different for me, but I also feel as though this has been some of the most important months in my entire life in terms of personal growth and self-reflection, and I'm really looking forward to talking to you guys a lot about that in today's video. I really want this today to just be a super honest, raw, unfiltered, sit down conversation between myself and anybody else who wants to listen. There's a lot that I want to talk about in today's video. I have a lot of positive topics, but I also think it would be ridiculous and irresponsible to try to just come back to social media and pretend like nothing happened and move on with regularly scheduled makeup programming. So I do also have some pretty serious topics to discuss in today's video as well, being what happened a couple of months ago. I want to clarify some things that didn't happen a couple of months ago and everything that happened after I posted my video, but more importantly, talk a lot about the realizations that I've come to behind the scenes, the conversations that I've been having with myself, my friends, my family, peers, business colleagues, and professionals to really come to terms with a lot of different issues that I have been ignoring for quite a while now. And once again, just talk a lot about the growth and hopefully be able to not move on from the situation, because I don't think that that's the appropriate language to use, but hopefully move forward. And I really hope that you guys will choose to join me in this conversation.
So if you want to see that full video, I'll go ahead and put the link to it in the description box. But I think that this is where he came to a realization that he needed help. He talked about getting professional help, talking with colleagues, his family members. So I think he's really starting to see that there was a problem and kind of like a repeat pattern, and he needed to get this help. So James Charles is talking about him talking with this person on Instagram and Tumblr. First of all, that should have been a red flag that there was a problem. Tumblr, come on now. Some fishy things going on Tumblr. But all jokes aside, then there's the whole Skype. The thing about Skype is something tells me there's something up in my head, so I want to make sure that I check. But clearly he was into his feels and he wanted to just talk with someone. Now, just for a record, I do know he was talking about his little girlfriends, but I wanted to just bring that up as a preface, because that was one of the things he was getting canceled for. Not his friends, but the people he was talking to that were underage. Now, he mentions in this that he came up in a school that didn't have a lot of gay people, neither did I. But I think this is about accountability. I don't know how he was raised, but I was raised in a family where there was extreme accountability. He might not have had that same raising, and I think that this is where it's important that when you have friends, you need friends that are going to hold you accountable. You need friends that aren't always going to agree with you. It sounded like he didn't have that. It sounded like he had friends that kind of would play along with his poor behavior. And this is what drives me nuts when people like Tati Westbrook and Jeffree Star want to comment about the situation. It's like, y'all were there right there with him. Like, you didn't say nothing. I don't know if I would say it's reckless to hit on people who he thought were interested in him. I would say, though, that it sounds a little bit desperate. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like disparity. It sounded like he didn't have a life coach. It sounded like he was just horny. Let's be real. It sounded like he was horny. He wanted to get it, and that was that. You know, the thing about being a creator is that you're really your own boss, and you have to be able to hold yourself accountable when you're in career fields where you're not going to be governed by managers and supervisors. And I think that's one of the things that happened here. He didn't have that. It made it seem like this conversation makes it seem like he was on some sort of teen dating app, which I don't know how I feel about that, but I don't think dating apps are much better either. But I do think it's a legal way and the right way to go about dating in that sense. If you're really actively looking to get into dating. He stated in this interview, James Charles stated in this interview, that he would go on to Raya, Tinder, Hinge, Bumble, which really are hookup dating apps, but he said he didn't ultimately end up pursuing them because he felt too exposed, which is a little contradictory considering he didn't feel exposed when he would be, as we say, hunting for men that he thought were interested in him. So I don't know how I feel about this statement, but you guys comment down below what you think. I feel like any of us could say, oh, well, I would do this if I was in this. I think any of us could say that, right? Until we're actually in those person's shoes. But one thing I've noticed throughout this entire article is that there's a lack of accountability, right? There's a lot of blaming it on, this and pandemic and not knowing and being young and having a lot of success and not having a lot of gay people in the city or the town or the school. There's a lot of lack of accountability, a lot of blaming on other factors, but not taking the accountability. And I think that's one of the things that lacks in a lot of creators is that lack of accountability. So I feel like in this part of the article where he talks about potential people who are, interested, he requires an ID check. And I don't know if that's it just seems to me like James Charles is trying to go for guys younger than him. And that already is a problem because it's not like he's 30. What is he, 23, 24? So he's not got a lot of opportunity to play with. You got what, 19, 20, 21, 22, so like 5 years. So I don't know, I just feel like there's a lot of disparity in there. That's just kind of my opinion. It's okay. It's just my opinion. I am allowed to have an opinion. But a lot of people do say that nothing happened to James Charles. He got off scot-free. If you know about what actually he lost, he lost brand deal sponsorships. He lost his deal with Morphe. He lost his deal with Instant Influencer. He lost a lot of opportunities and some opportunities to go to award shows and things like that, at least for a while. So I definitely would say he did not get off scot-free, but I think that a lot of people are talking about accountability. Oh, he also got demonetized for a while, so that also happened as well. But I think people are looking for the kind of accountability like jail time or stuff. It's like, hold on, let's really think about the facts here. The facts is just that there's nothing really providing any proof that he did anything, you know what I'm saying, illegal. I mean, what is it they say? Innocent till proven guilty. As a businessman, when I sit back and think about it, I'm like, he must have lost millions and millions of dollars. Okay, maybe not millions and millions of dollars, but at least millions of dollars in opportunities that he could have had he not been involved in these scandals. So I definitely would say he didn't get off scot-free. There was definite accountability. So we know that James Charles is coming out with a new paint line, which, against my better judgment, I think that there's a few missing pieces to this elusive puzzle. But I think one of my concerns is how is his past scandals going to affect this? Because it's not like when Jeffree Star would have a scandal, right? He'd deal with it, acknowledge it, take some time and kind of quell the people's anger, do some PR damage, and then he would continue with his launch. Whereas James Charles really hasn't done any of that, and I feel like this could hurt him potentially, because you have all these people who still have all these memories of past scandals, and especially more recently, could potentially hinder, that soft launch. I mean, obviously, it's kind of like a soft launch, so I guess I just would want to know that. So James Charles is talking about the formulation, the algorithm, the labor, everything that's gone into the painted line. The problem is he has not shown really anything over the last, he says it's been, 2 or 3 years? He not once showed anything, way back when he said he was starting it. I mean, you would at least want us to, it kind of hit us out of nowhere. I don't know if it's because of his controversies and his scandals, but it seems abrupt and rushed, and with a lot of issues that have come up over the more recent time, it just feels like a disaster waiting to happen. Oh, here goes the elusive, everyone fucks up and everyone makes a mistake. No. Not tying your shoelace tight enough, that's a mistake. Potentially talking to underage people and minors, that's not a mistake. That's an intent. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. In a lot of ways, I feel like we never got any legit answers, and I kind of feel like we never will, or if we do, it won't be for months or even years. And I'm not sure how I feel about that, especially since we know how cancel culture is. And I know cancel culture has taken quite a bit to James Charles, but I feel like that there's still so much that we just haven't discussed, and kind of feel like we won't. But that is it. I just wanted to cover this because I'm like, it had so much in there that I wanted to cover already in today's video, and I'm like, why not just go over it, right? Let's talk about it and have that conversation. Let me know what you guys think in the comment sections below. Do you agree that he should be moving forward? Is there another resolution? What do you guys think about this? Is he on his way to a downfall of his career, or is he moving forward? Let me know in the comment section below, and until next time, I'll see you next video. Bye now.